taking a look at the Gospel according to Matthew. And we're going to expand just a bit from what your bulletin says, but we're going to take a look at Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 12, still concentrating in 5 through 8. That's Matthew chapter 2. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star when it rose, and we have come to worship him." When Herod the king of Judea heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And assembling all of the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. And they told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet. And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, from whom you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them the time that the star appeared. And he went and he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go, diligently seek for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, that I too may come and worship him." After listening to the king, they went on their way. And behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. It's a very familiar story. We hear it every Christmas season, but I hope that we can take a few things afresh this year. Now, I admit that this year I got kind of hung up there in verse 8, where Herod tells these wise men to go and diligently seek for him and worship him. Oh yeah, I left out that little phrase that afterwards come and tell me that I may go also. You see, it was that diligently seek that really jumped off the page for me. Now, maybe that's because when I was wee little, elementary school, grammar school age-ish, one of my favorite games was hide and seek. Do y'all remember that? Anyone else play that? There's like 6 of us, 12 of us. Yeah. I enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. And the neighborhood kids, well, there's always varying levels of hiders and seekers. Some believe that, as long as they can't see you, you can't see them. You know what I mean? They hide kind of like this. There's always one kid in every neighborhood that does that. Fortunately, that was not me. And there are varying levels of seekers. I had one friend. He always won the game. Always. But he was the worst seeker ever. You know the gist. You count to a specified number. If you're in a real big area, 25 to 30, and then ready or not, here I come. Well, Brian understood that, but he didn't really like to execute it real well. You see, he'd count to the agreed upon number, and then he'd go in the house and check and see what kind of snacks they had. And it wouldn't be uncommon for him to bring out an apple or a pear and eat that, throw it away, go back in, get something to drink to wash it down with. Then, running by the TV set, he'd catch to the next commercial of whatever happened to be on. And then he would proceed to come and look for the rest of the neighborhood. Well, the way we all played, we were counting down also. We knew when he should be coming. And he was always 5 or 10 minutes longer than he should have been. So, us being concerned young people, we would come out of our hiding places thinking that he has fallen or he's tripped, he can't get up, he's stuck in the ditch. Just, don't know what could have happened. And just about the time that we would all come out of our hiding places, guess who would appear? And he would catch us all easily because we were all out in the open looking for him lying somewhere. You would think after a while we would get the idea he's not coming. But we never seem to. He struggled with seeking diligently. He just sort of let things happen. And because of that, a lot of the purpose and the interest and the excitement disappeared in a very hide-and-seek kind of way. This morning's scripture, we're told about a group of travelers who launch out to meet the newborn king. Isn't it interesting that the way the world changes, some things really do stay the same? Even now, governments will do what they can to send an ambassador to welcome in or celebrate major occasions like the birth of a prince or a princess that would ascend to the throne. After all, how many of us constantly heard about Prince George, was it? Yeah, I got real nervous there. I think the name started to slip from my head, and I really didn't want everyone going, who? We get caught up in the excitement and the energy, and here's leaders seeking out to join good relationships, good relations with what they perceive to be someone important. They know this because they see a star more brilliant than anything they've ever seen. They notice, they recognize something is going on. And they kind of just head out towards it. Nice and easy. Now, I'm going to assure you that that star was not quite like our GPS. And I know I'm dating myself because I still run by Garmin. I know we have these other nice little wonderful things that work wonderfully for GPS. I just can't bring myself to constantly use it. I really like the sound of recalculate. Well, actually, I have an English pitched version of it. Recalculating. Turn around and take the motorway. I just like that. It gives me some, I feel more regal. That's so much better than, Jack, you missed your turn. That somehow doesn't have the same ring to it. The star wasn't quite that way. The star wasn't leading the wise men to a particular address, but it led them towards the nation of Israel. They knew this. So, what better place to show up than the capital city? Surely in the capital, they would know where the future prince has been born. And you have to appreciate the wording. Where is he that is born the King of the Jews. Now, the dilemma here is they're going and they're actually talking to the current reigning king of Judea, a title that was given to Herod by the Roman Senate with the backing of Anthony and Octavius, so it came from way on high. And the one thing that we know even today is those in power really like remaining in power. Challenges to the throne are usually not welcomed. In fact, in the life of Herod, he is particularly ruthless and cruel. He really accepts no challenge even from his own family. The question's an important one for Herod. Where is he born? Of course, Herod has important things to handle, as the title King of Judea would entail. He's been concerned about a whole lot of stuff, and probably regular participation at temple was not one of them, because he has a joint meeting between the Magi and the chief priests and the scribes. We would probably hear this as a meeting with the Sanhedrin, really what is the Jewish Supreme Court of the time. These individuals, they would know. The chief priest would be the reigning high priest, and anyone else who has fulfilled that obligation in the past. So you have the important religious clergy present. And then the scribes are those who have taken down the law, the ones who understand it, who can write it back out. Here are the high-ranking Pharisees, and they come together as this magnificent, authoritative court. Now for them, this question's an easy one. Where is he that is born King of the Jews? Well, they know, they understand. There has been the promise of a Messiah. Micah tells us in chapter 5, verse 1 and 2, that Bethlehem, and specifically Bethlehem in Judea, because there's also one located in Galilee. But Bethlehem in Judea, now that is the area where this individual should be born. Answer solved. The wise men are happy. Herod's happy. The religious establishment comes across looking smart and important. And there's nothing more that we like than looking smart and important, right? Our work is done here. It's a good day's work. They depart, and then Herod calls for a secret meeting with the Magi. And in this meeting, he gives them just a little bit more information. As he sends them off to Bethlehem, he sends them off saying, "Go and diligently seek the child. And when you have found him, bring me word that I may also come and worship him." You see, he already realizes and understands that worship is going to be given to this young one. I always find it interesting that the understanding is there both from the chief priests and the scribes and Herod that they recognize this is the Messiah. Let that sink in for a moment. They recognize that this is God's chosen one being born. And yet they don't run off to worship him. They take a step back and they grab their apple. There's no urgency. There's no excitement. There's no joy. Herod gets an inroad. Did you notice that? Kind of jumped over it. In this secret ascertained meeting before sending them off, he asked them what time the star had appeared. See, he doesn't come right out and say, how old do you think this child would be? Instead, kind of rubs shoulders with them. Kind of sits down, takes it easy, and starts speaking their language, feigning an interest in them. When did you say this star appeared? That you set out looking for him? And he sends them off with the idea that they will find him and they will worship him. We still hear that or see that sign, and sometimes it's posted, wise men still seek him. I like that. I usually don't get much into bumper sticker theology, but I kind of like that one. Because what is sought is that relationship with Christ, a new understanding of what it means to be with Jesus. As we look at the wise men, we can recognize 6 crucial elements for them to arrive at this place where they're worshiping and entering into this life of Jesus. And it jumps around a little, so bear with me. We first understand that their decision to look for him and seek him is a costly one. See, they set out from the east. They traveled and they traveled, and they finally arrive. Now, later on, we hear where Herod determines the star was probably in the sky about 2 years earlier. So, hear me out. They have traveled from their place for 2 years. Okay, I just got to ask, how costly do you think that would be? Don't show up for work for the next 2 years and then travel that entire time, arriving finally at your destination. And if it took you 2 years to get there, anyone want to guess an approximate amount of time to get back home? It would stand to be logically around 2 years. Probably a little more, because let's face it, anytime we set out on any great excursion, we're so excited that the pace is a little quicker getting there and coming home. The excitement's over, and you just want to be home. It's been a costly endeavor. 4 years of travel. For what? To see this babe. There must be something special. There has to be something terribly important for that kind of investment. But you know, it doesn't stop in just the travel. They also came bearing gifts: gold, frankincense, myrrh. Now, we kind of get the gold idea. Costly, expensive, pure. In the ancient world, it would always represent royalty. So they bring a gift of gold to this baby. They don't end there. They also bring frankincense. Frankincense. Root of that, incense, aroma. Frankincense tended to be symbolic of divinity in the ancient world. In fact, some Catholic churches, well, most Catholic churches still, at the beginning of services, have that incense rising, keeping that tradition. They bring myrrh, which was a typical embalming agent, symbolic of humanity, of our frailty as humans, that while birth happens, we also reasonably realize that at some point life ends. None of these would be cheap. All of these would be, well, the frankincense and the myrrh would have a lot of workmanship to pull it off. The mixing of just the right ingredients in the right ratios for it to be worthy of a gift. This whole journey is quite costly. Not only is it costly, it's also a humbling experience. For when they do arrive in the house, they see Mary and the child, and they worship. See, that's a very crucial element. We do not worship equals. We do not worship folks that we view under our status. It is always someone or something that is elevated that we feel is worth our energies. And for these adults who are representative of their governments to bow down to a baby, a child, that would have to be humbling. To understand who and what would come would be humbling. Not only is it costly and humbling, it's relational. They don't do it from far off. Now, it's a relationship that requires presence. And presence in the sense of being there together, not gifts. They realized that while he would still be born if they stayed home in their Middle Eastern nation, he would still be prince, he would still rise to the throne, but something would be missed. It would be lost. They would not be the better for it. A genuine relationship with God requires that involvement. So they go, they get to know the child because Mama's there. They just don't know of him. They get to know him. Now, I'm not going to be presumptuous. Well, actually, I guess I am going to be a little presumptuous. Because let's face it, what do we all do when we meet a child? Now, of course, we all, if it's a newborn, which this probably isn't since they've moved on from the manger into a house by verse 11, which one of us haven't gone, who hasn't? It doesn't matter how important we think we are, we get involved. Which one of us, even with a 3-year-old, if they take out a play phone and goes, ring, 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 it's for you, which one of us would say, I don't have time for this? Of course we don't. We pick up the phone and say, hello? It's relational. They get to know this child and his mama. It's costly, it's humbling, it's relational, and it even becomes instructional. For having spent time with Jesus, with the Messiah, as a newborn baby, you notice right after we're told that in 11, after they present their gifts, after they worship him, in verse 12, they are warned in a dream to depart from for their country in another way. Because of their time spent with Jesus, their life changes. They were originally told to report back to Jerusalem, and then they could go on their merry way. Things changed. So we have costly, we have humbling, we have relational, we have instructional. And with instructional comes issues, salvific issues. It's a matter of one's salvation. You see, we can never enter into the presence of Jesus and leave unchanged. Something always happens. Our heart either races to get closer, to understand him more thoroughly, and to care and love him more, or our hearts become hardened. And we go the complete other way. We see that most notably here in Herod. We see it in the chief priests and the scribes. The opportunity to worship the Messiah that they recognized was there. In fact, it would have cost them next to nothing. Bethlehem of Judea lies approximately 6 miles south of Jerusalem. 6 miles. Man, that's from here to my house, here to Hall Street. What effort would that take? And yet, when encountered with the news, they did nothing. It's also a timely issue. Relationship with Christ is timely. What do we mean by timely? That today is the day to make it happen. The Magi, a long way away, saw this star and were instantly compelled to go. Now, I am not nearly as spontaneous as I used to be. I open up with that, I confess. I am not nearly as quick to just get up and go. Back in the day when I was a young man, you brought up the idea of doing something and we did it. I can remember returning to college. We would get there on a Friday evening. The classes would start on Monday. I can remember pulling into my college town in late August, and a couple friends would say, "Man, I'm just not ready for the semester to start. What I'd give for another weekend at the beach." I remember this happening one time at 11 p.m. I was in southwestern Pennsylvania. There's no beach within 7 hours of us. 11 p.m., someone said they didn't want the summer to end. They wanted one more weekend. You know what we did? We drove to Cape May, New Jersey. We left at 11:30. We got there sometime around 7 in the morning. We stayed there just a few hours and turned around and came right back. It was exhausting. It was ridiculous, but we did it. I remember another time, again at home, met a friend who happened to be an Elvis Presley fan. We had nothing to do that Saturday. So Friday, late afternoon, we decided, let's go to Memphis. Let's check out Graceland. There was a time when I was spontaneous. Now, if you were to ask me to do that, I'd think you're crazy. It must be planned. It must be checked for. Most importantly, we must clear it with Julia. Just can't be picking up and going. Just crazy. Unfortunately, I learned that through trial and error, and I erred a whole lot more than I tried. Timely matter. Today is the day. It begins with the wise men launching out immediately. Why? Because there's value. Why? Because it's important. Why? Because it'll change your entire life. I can also remember talking with friends in high school. As I look back on my life, I was this sports guy. Everyone knew me. I played ball, and I was good, and I was in the papers for it. But then when I look back, I was also kind of that oddball. I was probably a little strange, because during study hall, I was the guy reading his Bible. And I can remember going into classes and asking people, did they know Jesus? And I remember one guy particularly telling me that now wasn't the time for that. Once he lived his life, then he would consider it. When he was old, like 40. Well, we were 16. What did we know? To us, that was old. That was Mom and Dad's age. There wasn't the urgency there. He didn't see it as timely. It was something that could be put off. The one thing I've learned also about my life is if I don't do something that's requested of me immediately, life has a way of distracting me. It can be something easy, it can be something substantial. Usually the easier it is, the more tempted I am to wait. And that's where I get into all kinds of trouble at home. Honey, can you take out the garbage? Sure, dear, just let me finish. And it's funny how the 2 minutes of finishing, something else comes up. An email that I just have to look at, a joke on Facebook that I just can't pass up, a ball game on TV. And Julia shows up 2 hours later and said, "What happened to the garbage?" And it's like, "Oh yeah, I was supposed to do that, wasn't I?" Actually, who am I kidding? I blame the boys. I'm a wise man. I know this stuff. Yeah, I asked one of them to do it, and then you make it up to them, But it's crucial that we view these ideas, God's provoking, God's moving on us, as time necessary. It's not whenever, it is a now thing. When we look at those criteria of it being costly, humbling, relational, instructional, salvific, and timely, we see it spelling out Christ. It's what it's about. These individuals came and had an experience and went away radically different. And the individuals who should have known the most, the ones who understand it was going to happen, the ones who had every possible advantage, found 5 miles too inconvenient. Found giving gifts too costly. Instead of relationship, they wanted to ruin him. As far as instructional, they'd arrived. They were on the Jewish Supreme Court. What more would they need to know? Timely? Well, we can just play the let's wait and see game. Perhaps nothing will come of it, and if something does, well, then we'll act. Brothers and sisters, this season, I challenge you to diligently seek the Savior. Seeking Him means effort. It means commitment. It means, sometimes it means sacrificing. And it's not really a sacrifice if it costs us nothing. Very common story. Herod, the wise men, scribes and priests. This holiday season, which of these groups do you desire to emulate? If you choose the wise men, there's a follow-up question. What plans do you have to make sure you execute it? Because if we just sit back and trust that it'll happen, we will find ourselves just sitting back. This morning, as our musicians come, I bring back to the point that it is a timely matter. If you don't know the peace and the joy that Jesus can bring to your life, we're going to ask you as you stand to sing, slide out of the aisle, walk down, let us talk, let us pray together, and let us see how God can lead you much like he led the wise men. So brothers, sisters, sing. Brothers, sisters, pray. And do whatever business you need to with our Father.